The must-use primary resources, and again, we're emphasizing this multiple times to really make a point that UWorld is going to be your primary resource, and this is what your schedule should center upon. This is really where all the bang for your buck is going to come from, is the UWorld. And again, I'm talking about the step 2 question bank that you've probably already been using for your shelf exams. The goal here is maybe you've been doing little bits and pieces for each of your shelf exams. Perhaps you don't have a neurology clerkship and you haven't done the neuro questions, or maybe you have, but you haven't done some of the family medicine questions or the emergency medicine type of questions, however you've filtered it. So this is really the key thing that you want to get through. And as we talked about on a previous slide, wouldn't it be great if we could get through this, 2-3 times, maybe like you wanted to, or were able to do for step 1? Probably not going to happen given all of your time constraints. But getting through this at least once is really vital. Ideally, getting through the questions once and then maybe looking at your incorrects is a really solid foundation. And then, it comes to now thinking about, how do I supplement this? Because I think we are all probably a little uncomfortable maybe just relying on the question bank. So things you can use that are tried and true, that people have found useful to supplement your UWorld would be, a selection, among either Step Up to Medicine, the ACP IM Essentials, which will really hone in on those internal medicine questions that, like we said, are the bulk of the exam. And then Master the Board, Step 2 CK. I think what you're probably noticing is that, unlike if you ever went to our step one seminar on kind of preparing for that, it was a very clear, use this, this, and this. This is different. Other than UWorld, it's really, these other resources are all sort of just as good as one another. We don't feel like there's one that really stands out as the best or the most comprehensive. I think each one has its weakness and each one has its advantage. That doesn't mean you should try to go through all 3. It's going to be impossible. And getting through one of these is a feat enough. So I think now is a great time, before you start to really sit down and dedicate yourself to step 2 studying, to maybe look at some excerpts of this book. See if you have friends that have a copy. See if there's a copy floating around somewhere, or maybe from your library, you can look at it online. Look through these, and some people have very strong feelings about what type of format they like better, what pictures they like better, things like that. So take a look now and get a sense for which one you'd like to use, and then just commit to it. And I think as long as you, focus on that one resources and don't feel like you need to really cover all 3 of these resources, just have a nice supplementary book that you can use to, again, kind of use alongside of your UWorld. Anything else, Abasana, that you like to do as far as utilizing those extra resources here?
Yeah, no, I think I couldn't agree more with exactly what you said. I think UWorld is non-negotiable. I think we've made that hopefully very clear by now. But you need something additional to UWorld. And so whether that be one of these resources, whether that be first aid for step 2, these are the ones that we classically recommend, but I've heard many students say that they love first aid. I've heard many students say that they love online med ed. I've heard many students say that they love boards and beyond. So again, all of these organizations have resources for step 2, but I think what's exactly as Taylor said, identify early which style works best for you, because they're all very, very different. Online med ed, boards and beyond are more video based. These are more textbook based. Step Up is a little bit more like bullet points versus more of a written textbook, which you might see in IM Essentials. So really identifying what your learning style is. And I can't emphasize enough that you do not need to use all of them. One of them is more than sufficient to do well. And I think that you just need to figure out what works best for you and how you learn best. And that'll be the key. And sort of speaking to that, so the supplementary resources, I sort of alluded to this a little bit before. So first aid for step 2 is, again, as I've mentioned, it is there. It is not classically thought to be as useful as first aid for step 1, but many students still like it and use it. But in general, not as much of a consensus around it as there was for step 1. Online med ed, again, some people really like the video format. I will say that in general, I have found my students use it as a sort of like a template of what is good topics to cover, but that they often need a little bit more detail from one of those primary textbooks, for example, to sort of flesh out their knowledge in that specific topic. Pestanas is really great for surgical topics specifically. And then additionally, the sketchies are always good for some of the sort of driving those messages home based on if that's a good way for you to learn. Amboss also has video series and questions. And then of course, Anki will continue to be an important part of sort of driving those things in and reiterating. But again, I just want to stress, figure out what 2 or 3 things. So UWorld is number 1. Figure out some way to sort of organize UWorld, whether that be through a textbook or OneNote or whatever works for you. And then something to sort of just keep testing yourself and sort of building on that is, I think, the key to this entire process. Anything else on that, Taylor?
No, I think that's great. And I think the next slide really kind of visualizes sort of, depicts what we're talking about. So just again, when you're thinking about, oh my gosh, how do I incorporate all these resources? Just like you said, starting with UWorld, the way I tend to do it myself and recommend to students, if you're a little crunched for time, which inevitably seems to be the case for step 2 more than step 1, is kind of starting with UWorld. Again, everything's going to be focused on that. So you do the UWorld questions. Maybe you're going to start by a system. So let's say you're going to start doing the cardiology questions, and you're starting with these questions and you're really going to let them guide your study. So what some students will do is they'll do the questions, and then as they encounter a topic that they don't know well, they don't remember well, they'll turn to that corresponding section in Step Up to Medicine, for example, or if it's a surgery question, maybe the Pestanas notes or whatever that supplementary kind of second, third level resource is. And it's really it's filling in the gaps, as you said, Sana, filling in the gaps about that UWorld information. So of course you read the really detailed explanation in UWorld that you paid a fortune for, that great summary of the incorrect answers, why this answer is correct. And then anything that you're confused about, you go and look in these other resources to address. I know sometimes reading, if you don't know a topic particularly well or don't feel comfortable with it, reading the UWorld explanation can feel a little disjointed, especially when you read the incorrect answer explanations. So having a template that is in Step Up to Medicine, for example, or some, whatever other resource it is, can be really helpful. I see a lot of questions about kind of other specific in the chat about other specific resources. I don't know about you, Sana, I haven't heard about one being better than the other in terms of these resources, and it seems to me like it's really personality dependent. You know yourself very well by now in terms of what's worked for clerkships. Are you a question bank kind of person? I mean, are you a flashcard kind of person? For me, the only thing I really used outside of question bank was Sketchy. I did Sketchy Path, Sketchy Micro, Sketchy Farm. I was just obsessed with it. For some people, that doesn't work at all, or it's just far too time intensive and labor intensive. And those people should definitely not be doing Sketchy. So whether it's Boards and Beyonds filling in the gap, or Online Med filling the gap, I think the Divine podcasts are fantastic. He was in the year above me in medical school, and he's just as amazing as he is on the podcast. Those are fantastic. I think it's a little bit of a passive way to learn sometimes, listening to podcasts, but they're awesome if you're driving to clerkships or walking to clerkships or have some downtime. They're a fantastic way to review high yield material. So I think the point we're trying to drive home is any of these resources are amazing. They're all tried and true, really high quality. They should all be used to supplement UWorld. And the goal shouldn't be getting through all of Online Med, but rather using Online Med to enhance your UWorld preparation. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the key is really just knowing yourself. And if you don't know yourself, then test everything out. If you have the luxury of time at this point, depending on when you're taking step 2, if you're not planning to take it until the summer or beyond, I think now is the perfect time to sort of try a little bit of everything and see what makes sense for you and sort of go from there. But again, I think that all of these resources are very high quality. It's just a matter of what your personal style is.